I've been coming to IPA events as the Shadow Cabinet Minister for Small Business for 4 years now. And that continuity, I think, has paid dividends in terms of, I think, a very good collaborative relationship, considered policy proposals, and I think a real alternative between what the government's offering and what I'm working for in order to earn support to implement a different approach after the election. I think that I want to start somewhere where I don't normally start, and I want to link it to the I Love Small Business measure. I talked with Andrew about this after doing a piece on Northern Queensland Radio, saying there's something that's missing. There's a real piece in the public discourse that needs to be activated, and that is an understanding of and an affection for the small business community, because not enough people talk about it. And even when, and Bernie's a good guy, but you know, a perfunctory account of things going on doesn't capture the emotion and the importance and the virtue of a small business community that's just crying out for someone who will work as hard for their success as they do. And that's what's missing. There's not that emotional commitment to not just give a head nod to the men and women of small business, but to actually embrace their ambitions and their hopes for the future and say this is inculcated in our plan for the nation. Not only is small business virtuous, because it is courageous men and women taking risks, mortgaging their houses, lying awake at night, whispering sweet nothings, not about passion, but about profit and cash flow, wondering whether they'll see some reward for their effort and their courage, knowing that almost half the private sector workforce depends for their livelihoods on the enterprise of small businessmen and women. Where is that passion? And that's what's needed, and that's what gave rise to the I Love Small Business. We did talk about hug a small business person, but we weren't quite sure. There were some risk issues around that, and we thought we better draw a line. So we thought, well, I Love Small Business will capture a change in ethos and in emphasis that's desperately needed. And I want to start by putting that on the table, that more of the same is not what this crucial part of our community and our economy needs. Now why do I say that? Well, do you know there's actually 243,000 fewer people deriving their livelihoods as employees of small businesses now than 5.5 years ago? Bernie talked about the economy growing at 40%. Well, the Commonwealth's outlays have grown at 40%. So just to give you a sense of relativity, in the most recent statistics that were released, there are now still 3,000 fewer employing small businesses than was the case back in 2007. Small business formation rates have halved. Insolvency rates are frightening. Garnishee orders from the tax office are up 400%. This is the environment, and it requires passion and drive and commitment that 5 ministers in 15 months, 6 over the course of Labor, hasn't brought to the table yet, and I see no sign of that changing. But it needs to change. When you think about what I call the over-the-horizon economy, what does it look like? What does it look like? Well, we believe a powerhouse economy in our country, yes, it needs mining, and we need to be more competitive to attract that investment. One quick stat, 16% cheaper to start a coal mine in Australia in 2007, 66% more expensive to do it today compared to North America. Where would that investment go? They're not reserved for us opportunities. We're going to fight for those and work for them, and show that we're a competitive and an attractive investment destination for those investments that can go anywhere in the world. We think agriculture is crucial, yet we were a net importer of processed foods last year. Yet surely we talk about feeding the 300 million middle-class people in China, and you think, well, hang on, we're not competing even in our domestic economy. We need to change that. In the area of the services economy, some would argue 3/4 of all employment's in the services economy. Where's that piece? A crucial part of our economy where small business and family enterprise reigns supreme. Where's that? But surely that's got to be part of our agenda. But you don't hear that. You don't hear that. Manufacturing needs to be part of it. Not the cheap race to the bottom, can we make Chevy Malibus dressed up as Commodores cheaper than Thailand? No, not that. And we're talking about where we've got sophistication, where we've got an innovation edge, where it's high value, elaborately transformed manufacturing, not a contest with cheaper economies to build the same stuff. And that's the picture that we aim to bring. And education's a crucial part of that. The learning experience. It was the greatest exporter earner in Victoria last year was education. Yet where's that picture? Where's that powerhouse economy? Now you look in that vision and you think about the over-the-horizon economy, where's small business in that? I don't hear the government talking about that. But I know when we're wondering where the jobs of the future are coming from, people will start re-engaging with small business. So shouldn't we be making it more attractive for people to establish a business? Less complex when they're up and going? A sense that there's a reward for them if they take risks and apply their enterprise well? An appetite to employ people? Where is that piece? But you don't hear the government talk about that. You heard a bit of talk about the business register. Well, that's great, something the Howard government started. But for anyone who knows, paying the $70 to register your name isn't your problem. It's the hour and a half you wait to get through. And the problems if you're transferring a business, and I won't spend too much time on that, but that's a cost. And that's why when we talk about red tape reduction, we talk about $1 billion cost reduction. Not just the upfront fee, but the displaced effort, the professional services you need to pay for, the frustration and the time away from your business. We talk about those tax issues. Sure, instant asset write-off's attractive. I don't doubt that. But you've got to be able to pay for it. And at the moment, we're clocking 5 of the largest budget deficits in our nation's history. When do we start paying our way as a country? When do we stop adding that layer of debt and debt servicing into the economy of the future that will limit our options and it will deflect resources from being invested in the things we need to simply paying our interest bill? $20 million a day we pay on interest at the moment. So if you've got the money and you've got the ready cash, well, knock yourself out, go and buy an asset. But to say it's a booming cash flow advantage ignores the fact you need the readiest to begin with. And as that tax calculator suggests, falsely, that there's some additional tax advantage to you, that's not right. The depreciation opportunity remains. It's just a scheduling of when that can be brought to account. So that is almost fraudulent, that tax calculator, because it says additional tax benefit. There is none. There's a rescheduling of a tax benefit that's spread over the depreciable life of the asset. That is false and misleading, Mr. Shaper. You should get onto that. Because that is part of the overreach and spin that small business has seen through. And if you wonder why the small business community isn't responding well to the government's rhetoric, that's the classic example. It's a complete exaggeration. And if you're in a cash flow difficult situation, spending more money to buy an asset isn't going to help you that much if you've already got cash flow problems. And 18 months later, you might get a depreciable benefit on your return for that year. That's an interesting concept. Spend a lot, get a little back. And on loss carryback, we argued for that when the GFC hit, when businesses were humming along and then they hit a wall. An extraordinary change in economic circumstances that may have brought about a loss situation quite different from a profitable trajectory. But apparently that wasn't needed then, when it could have been of most use. Our proposal was rejected. Now it's introduced. And as all of you know, and your clients and those you deal with know, no one's been bouncing along the top of some profit tree for a while. You know, for many, it's been a profitless trading environment. So what are you carrying back against? It's hardly been a buoyant profit period. And for those in small business who go to their bank and say, look, I know you're very fond of me, but we've had a crackingly rotten year here, but don't worry, we can lay it off on this loss carryback, I'm sure you'd have some questions to ask about you want us to keep financing you on the chance you get a little love back because you've had a bad year, but you'll spring back into life next year. Now that may be of advantage to some people, those who intentionally restructure. I don't doubt that. But for small business, you've got to convince your banker and your spouse and everyone else to keep going and to have the profits against which you can lay it off. And you need to be a company. Only 1/3 of small businesses are structured as companies. Half of those are profitable and fewer still pay company tax. So where is this booming benefit? And that's the overreach that's causing problems. Now what we've said is, no, we need a serious commitment to a renaissance in small business and enterprise in this country and in our economy. We need to celebrate the virtue of small business people, to recognise and respect what they're doing and value their efforts, to encourage more to want to go down that pathway. Talk to a young person today. Ask how many of them aspire to be an entrepreneur. Ask the sons and daughters of small business people where they've seen mum and dad work their tails off for very little reward and ask them whether they're going to go down that pathway or whether they're going to get a salaried position somewhere else. You ask them. because I do. And you know, they tell me, Bruce, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but I know it's not what mum and dad are doing. And I've been there. I've got the red ink to show for my wife and I in our small business. Not with your bank, sir, but we've got a behemoth loading on our mortgage as well. Because we had a go, we understand how difficult it is. And I can still remember to this day my rent, $4,667 a day. And I still remember who was the last to be paid. And I still remember how difficult it was to say to our team and our suppliers who depended on us, I'm sorry, we can't keep feeding this. That's the challenge. That's the reality that needs to be changed. Well, how do we change that? Well, we get serious about it in the first place. We don't tinker at the edges. We don't oversell things that offer modest advantage to those well placed to benefit from them and then claim it's available to everybody. We get serious about it. We get serious about it with abolishing the carbon tax. Yeah, Bernie put out a press release 2 days ago. It said, hey, guess what? Small business doesn't pay the carbon price. Yeah, that's a wide-eyed, raised eyebrow job if I've ever heard one. Today, the Australian Industry Group said, no, not only is small business paying for this, there's less than 1 in 20 able to pass on anything more than 40, 50% of their energy cost increase to their customers. And that's just on the energy. So they're sucking that up. They're taking another hit to their viability and their profitability. And that's not to mention the carbon tax embedded increase in their supply chain. So not only is small business paying for it, they aren't able to pass it on. And they're paying for it and they're getting the pain of a tax that is a reverse tariff undermining our competitiveness as a nation and still seeing our emissions increase. That's why we want that to go. We think there is no single direct thing you could do to reboost business and consumer confidence than to get rid of that tax. We've said to households, you can keep the income tax changes that were there as compensation without the pain of the tax. We've said to those that are dependent on fortnightly welfare payments, you can keep those increases that were compensation without the tax. We this morning gave the government the chance not to increase that tax by a further 5%. That happens in 4 days. It goes up again. And then next year it goes up again. And then it's applied to heavy transport as well, making it even more difficult in a cost-conscious environment for a small business to succeed, bearing in mind there is no compensation or carve-out for them. Same with the mining tax. Why? I talked to you before about mining investments. There's no reserve for us opportunities. You don't go and change the rules halfway into a major investment like a mining project. You don't create that sovereign risk. You don't do what Kevin Rudd did and become Canada's miner of the year because no one had done more to support mining in Canada than the Australian Prime Minister by introducing the mining tax. Because all the investors said, gee, Canada's a whole lot more attractive than Australia now. Yet you look at that CapEx, you look at those GDP figures, those components, look at CapEx and how much of it depends on mining and wonder why we're nobbling our strength. Bizarre. We've also argued red tape is crucial, but just don't talk about it, everyone has. Do what Andrew suggested. What are those tangible things that we can do? I've nominated some. Stop small business being the pay clerk for the paid parental leave scheme. 14, 15 transaction, risk of significant fines for a payment over which you have no control. You don't determine eligibility, you don't even finance it. But you do carry the burden of changing your systems to make that payment, to mimic it as if it's a payment, but then disconnect it from workers' comp, payroll tax. You've got to fake it like it's a paycheck, and apparently the relationship is strengthened between you and your employee because there's an electronic funds transfer mentioned somewhere. It's an interesting kind of relationship. Even in the area of the distribution of superannuation, we've argued, and I know Peter's been hot on this, why not send that through with your PAYG instalments and let the tax office distribute it? Now, who wakes up in the morning thinking Centrelink's there to help small business? Yet that's where you've got to go for a facility that mimics some of these attributes. And if someone doesn't pay, where are the tools? Well, they're all in the tax office. Which brings me to another point. Don't have small business dagged off the side of the industry portfolio, knocking on the door hoping someone someday will listen to them. Get small business and its concerns and its policy objectives and its considerations in at the heart of economic policy formulation in this country. And that's in Treasury. Where do you think the tax laws come from? Where do you think the policy work on competition policy comes from? Where do you think some of the ideas about ASX intrusions come from? Where does the fiscal policy setting, the monetary policy, all of those machinery issues that shape the nature of our economy and the opportunity for small business and the rewards and hopes that they bring, where does that come from? Well, it's not from the industry portfolio, it's from Treasury. And just as I travel regularly to see the Reserve Bank Governor and say, Governor, make small business your business, that's the same message to those economic policy formulators in Treasury. Can't hide from it, front and centre. Back it up with a minister in cabinet, not at the kids' table. Not at the kids' table. Inculcate these concerns and the need for small business success in what we do, front of mind considerations. We've talked about that in terms of unfair contract terms protections. It's available for consumers, standard form, take it or leave it contracts, major imbalance in power between the parties. If you're a consumer, you've got some remedies available to you. As a small business person with no more capacity to influence the nature and the discharge of those contracts, where do you go? Well, you go nowhere. And that's a fiction. I know from my own experiences dealing with a telco when we were setting up our business, I had no more power to influence them or their contracts. But if I was an individual consumer and there was something unfair and unfair terms about it, I could get relief. As a small business person, apparently I'm, a commercial law expert, and I can, have an arm wrestle with a big corporate over there, take it or leave it standard form contracts. That's got to go. The competition laws themselves need to be revisited. It's a generation since there was a root and branch review of our competition laws. The economy has changed markedly. The big supermarkets have gone from 40% market share to 80%. Some of the provisions like the misuse of market power, Section 46, promised so much, turned out to be a hunting dog that won't leave the porch. Almost impossible to offend. From the Borrell case, from the need to link that market dominance, which is so strong you're able to move prices with no impact on your market share. Name me someone who can do that, but that's the test of the substantial market power. And then you've got to show that you've then made use and taken advantage of that to do something horrible to someone else, and that was your motive. That's a tough test. That's why it's hard to pursue. And if you do succeed, the offender gets slapped with a wet lettuce leaf. This isn't good enough. This was the omnipotent provision that was supposed to have justified the price discrimination power being removed, that would deal with areas of egregious misuse of a dominant market position. Yet it's a hunting dog that doesn't leave the porch. The supply chain implications on mergers and acquisitions. Yeah, the Commission might think about it, but they're not obliged to, and they should. Because my idea of small business in a competitive economy is a chance for hope, reward and opportunity, not some kind of modern serfdom where the big overlord decides when and how you can be profitable. That does not encourage investment. That does not create a fair environment with which calculated risk can be implemented and you can back your judgment and apply your enterprise, and if you succeed, good luck to you. But that isn't the kind of relationship too many small businesses are experiencing in their relationships, and that's why the law needs to be revisited. We think government should actually pay its contracts on time. Novel idea? Novel. Pay your bills. Don't have the Commonwealth back its cash flow by junking yours. If they're not paid in 30 days, there should be an automatic interest penalty at the same rate the tax office imposes. Not the current system where you've got to go and ask for it. Oh, hi, I really love the fact I've got a contract with the Commonwealth. You've been a bit late. I hope it doesn't upset you too much if I go and ask for what is rightfully mine and then have another bureaucratic process to actually get it. We don't think that's right. And the contracts themselves, Andrew. How you bundle and aggregate work so it's a complex, broad range of activity that no small enterprise can get their head around, let alone compete for. Having a small business-friendly procurement arrangement across the Commonwealth, crucial. Having small business on key economic and regulatory bodies, crucial. Having it in Treasury so that situational awareness about the economy every day has small business inculcated in it. A minister who not only gives us stuff but gives his all to see successful small business people. So that when that over-the-horizon economy comes, we've got a diverse, resilient economy where we've got multiple strengths, where you don't have to be a behemoth to be profitable. That being agile, being courageous, being entrepreneurial, being committed to your business success sees you get some rewards for that. And then young people will think, maybe I want to do that. We'll know our success when young people not only say, I love small business, they say, I want to be one. And that's the transformation we need in this economy. There's lots more I could say, but I won't because I'm putting Peter to sleep. But thank you. Thank you for a few minutes of your time today.
Thanks, Bruce. Very good.